All right. Well, welcome everybody to Fifth Street Soccer here on the Sports Byline USA Radio Network, and of course also streaming live at fifthstreetsports.com, YouTube, Twitch, and everything else. Great to be with you today as we get ready for a big weekend in football. Particularly going to talk about the Barclays, no longer the Barclays Premier League. Listen to me, I'm such a creature of habit. Talking about the Premier League, we're going to talk with a good friend of mine, former voice of the Premier League for Fox Sports, Nick Webster, will be joining me. We're going to take a look at this weekend's matchups, look at some odds, find some secret value for you. Once again, I am Nick Eber. This is Fifth Street Sports. It is great to be with you. You can find us on Twitter, by the way, at fifthstreetsports.com. Pardon me, at Fifth Street Sports. Twitter doesn't have a .com. I am really aging myself here, but that's okay. Worse things have happened. Some really pivotal games coming up this weekend in the Premier League. Really more as relates to the relegation situation in the Premier League more than anything else. And for me, the match that stands out far and away to be the most interesting matchup is West Ham Southampton. That's at the London Stadium. That's home for West Ham. There's obviously been a lot of crowd and fan issues there before. It's going to be really a fascinating matchup and some really good value on that particular game as well. We're going to go through it all. Crystal Palace, Liverpool, Brighton, Leicester, United, Swansea, Newcastle, Huddersfield. The list goes on and on. We're going to get to it all. As well, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the rather earth-shattering news that came out yesterday in terms of the FIFA World Cup, the refereeing situation. They have decided, the list of referees have been put out, and there's not a single British referee going either in the capacity of a head referee or as an assistant referee going to the World Cup whatsoever. What does that mean? Does that say anything about the state of refereeing in the Premier League, in England in general, or in Britain? Or does it say more about what's expected from European referees? Or is it in some ways an indictment of English football again? All right, well, we're going to step aside. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back. We're going to bring back Nick Webster here to Fifth Street. It's been it's been a long time since I've had Nick on the show. It's great to have him with us. We will be right back after these messages. This is Fifth Street Sports Soccer on the Sports Byline USA Radio Network, and we'll be right back after this. Okay, that was a little rough. All right, welcome back to the show, Fifth Street Soccer on the Sports Byline USA Radio Network, SB Nation Radio. It is great to be with you. By the way, I'm with you every Friday, 1 p.m. Pacific time, 4 p.m. Eastern, and then again later on in the day so that you can get your fill of pre-football news and talk here to get you ready for the weekend. Once again, Twitter is at Fifth Street Sports. That's at Fifth Street Sports. And by the way, if you really, really want to get into the sports of the weekend, be sure to tune into Fifth Street Sports tomorrow at 2 p.m. Pacific. That's 5 p.m. Eastern time. We're going to go through everything college basketball. We're going to go through the opening of baseball season. We're going to look at some particular value. And Oklahoma Brian will be coming on and giving us some really good inside information about the state of the NCAA referees, some interesting info that you're not going to want to miss. In the meantime, let's turn our attention back to the Premier League, where there are some big matches coming up this weekend. Let's bring in my good friend, former voice of the Premier League on Fox Sports, Nick Webster.
Mr. Geber, how the hell are you? You're looking absolutely superb and resplendent in your mum's basement. Looks like we're having a bit of technical issues. I can't hear you, Nick.
Wonderfully important things to say. Can you hear me now, Nick?
I can. That's much better.
That's much better. Very exciting.
And thanks for having me as well.
Well, it's good to have you back, Nick. It's been a while. So let's get right to it, shall we? Because this weekend in the Premier League, there are some big matchups, really as relates more to the situation with the relegation battle, which is what makes the Premier League, and it's so exciting, of course, is that as we get 31 games into a 38-game season, what's happening at the bottom of the table is much more exciting than what's happening at the top.
At the top of the table, bit of a snooze fest really, with Manchester City rather running away with the old Premiership title. I think you told me earlier today that the odds of City were something like 250,000 to 1.
Well, let's see. I have here the odds, and maybe hold on a second. Let me pull these up here. But I believe it was 200,005 minus 200,005 for City to win the Premier League. Now, that is as sure a bet as you're going to get. However, if you want to bet $200,005 just to win 100, that's then good on you. You must have just won the mega lottery that's currently going on in various states. What's that? $500 million, Nick?
Well, maybe if you put $500 million on City, you know.
Oh, actually, Nick, I'm going to tell you, the odds have changed, actually. The odds have shifted since last week. And you can look here, and you can actually see we have for Man City to win the Premier League is minus 100,010. For Man United... Yeah, that could be it. Or maybe he had that case of incurable gonorrhea that I was reading about the other day. But, wouldn't want to disparage him, so maybe that wasn't David Silva. But Man United winning the Premier League is plus 24,990. That means a $100 bet would win you nearly 25,000 if United were to pull it out. And, of course, I think that is not happening. Tottenham are plus 99,990. Nick, maybe you would feel... You'd think, right? And Liverpool are plus 49. Boggs, can you put this back up for a minute? Let's put this back up there for everybody. If you're watching us, by the way, on YouTube, or you're watching us on Twitch, you can see these odds. These are courtesy of betanesport.eu. By the way, if you'd like to actually do a little wager yourself, go to our website, go to Fifth Street Sports /bet-now, and we'll explain how you can do this. But those are some juicy odds, I think, if there were to be a massive upset, which, Nick, quite honestly, is just not happening, though, is it? Well, it's quite bad. It's quite bad when you're thinking that it's quite bad that when you're looking for some form of act of God to really pull it out for you. They really have been absolutely incredible this year, Nick, and um, it's going to really come down to just how strong of a run in they have. Of course, Wednesday is an acid test far and beyond just what's happening in the Premier League. It's Liverpool, it's Man City, it's the Champions League. It is a pivotal match that's going to happen, and it's going to. I'm just wondering, for example, if you look at the Liverpool match this weekend, playing Crystal Palace, an important match for Liverpool because they want to secure, a top 3 finish. But you would think that their eye's going to be on Wednesday with the upcoming match against City.
In the recent memory, you can't help but think back to the dramatic 3-3 draw that derailed Liverpool's title hopes. 3-0 up, and all of a sudden they effed it up, as they say in the trade. And I think that Crystal Palace under Roy Hodgson, they've really kind of turned it around. Yes, they had lost a few games recently, but they had a big win last time out. Winifred Zaha is coming back into the fray, and he's an exceptional talent down the left-hand side. Robertson, who one of the Liverpool fullbacks, is out injured. Salah has been traveling quite a bit with the team, as has Firmino. So you wonder if there could be a little bit of tiredness creeping into Liverpool at this point of the season, especially when you have one eye on this massive monumental game against City in the Champions League. And you'd have to think that for both City and Liverpool, the Champions League is priority number one. And if you look at the odds right now, you can get almost 5-1 on Crystal Palace upsetting Liverpool. I actually think that's not bad value.
Well, I think it's not bad value. I think a draw might be better value at plus 150, though, Nick, because I can't see Palace beating them, but I certainly could see them getting a draw, particularly if Salah is not in his normal rabid, rampant goal-scoring self. But the spreads are half a goal, so they're not looking for a high-scoring game. Yeah. Well, it's a pretty good prediction, Nick. As much of a Liverpool supporter as I am, I'm going to go with you on that one because I think the situation with the Wednesday match is really going to be overshadowing them. I mean, look, the situation in the Premier League in terms of the table is 63 points, albeit they've got an extra game. Chelsea are in 5th spot, 56 points. The Champions League is all but wrapped up for Liverpool, barring a monumental breakdown. The issue then becomes is it going to be, do they have to go through qualification or are they going to get one of the automatically qualifying spots? So I'm with you, Nick. I think if there's any match this weekend that's potentially ripe for an upset, it's Liverpool Palace at Anfield. Yeah, I'm really going to be interested to see how this one unfolds. Of course, Palace, after having lost to Everton, lost to Tottenham, lost to Man United, lost to Chelsea, playing another of the big boys. They've had an awful run-in terms of fixture lists with all the big clubs, with the exception of Everton. But that was 5 games ago. But they did get a fabulous result against Huddersfield, which was a massive result for them last week. And you're going to look to they're going to build on top of that. All right. Well, we're going to have to step aside, take a break. This is Fifth Street Sports Soccer on the Sports Byline USA Radio Network. I'm Nick Eber. He's Nick Webster, and we'll be right back after this. To Webster? Scott, can you hear me? Nick.
Yeah.
Can you hear Nick now?
Hello, hello, hello.
Can you hear that, Scott?
1, 2, 3, 4. This is Fifth Street Sports. Talk you can bet on. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Excuse me, Nick. Can you say something?
Yes. 1, 2, 3, 4. This is Fifth Street Sports. Talk you can bet on. Coming to you live and direct from Los Angeles.
Yeah. Say something, please.
Hello, hello, hello. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. This is Nick Webster coming to you from Los Angeles.
Okay.
What? Sounds awful.
All right, welcome back. Fifth Street Sports Soccer on the Sports Byline USA Radio Network. I'm Nick Eber. Great to be with you. You can find me on Twitter at Fifth Street Sports, or you can find me, my personal Twitter is at Nick Eber. Welcome back to the show. Nick Webster, the former voice of the Premier League on Fox Sports. We're talking about some of the big matches coming up this weekend in the Premier League. We've been talking a little bit about Liverpool Crystal Palace. That is a big match for Crystal Palace, much more so than Liverpool, I might add. Palace currently in 16th spot out of 20 in the Premier League. The relegation zone is 28 points. They're at 30 points. And there is that massive blinder of a match, West Ham-Southampton, which we're going to get to. Going to tease a little bit of that still, Nick. We're not going to rush right into it. Welcome back, Nick.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It really is a gorgeous Friday here. And I can't wait for the Premiership to be back because you had all those stupid bloody internationals all last week.
There is nothing I dislike more than international friendly matches. There's nothing exciting. There's nothing compelling. I don't know if, you consider them tune-ups for the World Cup. I suppose that's what they are. I'm just not that interested, Nick. I mean, international football doesn't excite me at the best of times anyway. It's got to be something really incredible like the World Cup. Least of all, international friendlies. An absolute waste of time, detract from the big show, if you ask me.
Oh, absolutely. It'll be interesting to see, though, what happens with this new Nations League that's coming into effect I believe this coming fall for the Americans.
You mean the new money-spinning friendly league created by Gianni Infantino to show that he can raise as much money as the former Septic Blatter did?
Very possibly, yes.
A very unpopular league, Nick. I mean, most of the big clubs, most of the national team managers are not a fan of the Nations League. I think they like the flexibility of these ridiculous friendlies. And of course, the other point of these friendlies is the venues being flexible on these. They're big money makers for promoters as well.
Well, I think it's really a very desperate attempt by UEFA to combat the power of the UEFA Champions League, which, to be honest with you, in my mind, is the finest football on the planet. First and then second would be the Premiership, but that's just me being completely jingoistic.
Yeah, and look, I mean, we've had this discussion, and we can continue to have this discussion. Is the Spanish league technically a better league than the Premier League? Very possibly.
Well, yeah, I mean,
I agree. Is it exciting a league? Not to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it is tastes and what you were brought up on. But if we look at what soccer is popular here in the United States, and I guess this would be the test market, being that soccer's not part of the mainstream culture. The Premiership is by far the more exciting and the more watched league. So that would lead me to believe that perhaps there's more entertainment value in the Premiership than La Liga. But from the purest standpoint, I can absolutely see why La Liga is taken so highly, because of the technical excellence of the players.
Well, Nick, a couple of things to look for, particularly as we get ready for the World Cup. There was the list of officials was put out, I believe overnight here in the States, would have been in the morning in Europe. And unsurprisingly, or surprisingly, not a single British official was on the list, either of head referees or assistant referees, not a single one. And of course, of the leagues in Europe who are actually playing with video replay, which will be at the World Cup, the British refs have more experience than most on them, not as much experience as Major League Soccer referees, I might add. And it is interesting to note how many American referees actually made the final pool. What do you think, Nick? Is there anything to that? Is the state of refereeing in the English game so poor now that not a single referee makes the World Cup pool?
No, I think for some reason it feels actually like a punishment of sorts to English referees. But if we look at historically, you know, Howard Webb refereed the final in 2010 between Spain and Holland, and many people said he didn't do a very good job. I was actually at that game, and it was incredibly spiteful and played in a very nasty spirit. And I thought actually Webb did well to keep all players on the pitch for most of the game. And then Mark Clattenburg, who was a very polarizing figure, he actually refereed the final of 2016 in the Euros between Portugal and France, and I thought did a great job on that. The list of English referees that are in the Premiership that possibly could have gone to Russia, I think Michael Oliver always does a very nice job. And I actually like Andre Mariner, even though he's kind of in the Howard Webb role. Obviously Martin Atkinson I can't stand, and but and Mike Dean is absolutely obnoxious. So I'm glad those two haven't been put in the frame. But yes, I think from a nationalistic point of view, it is disappointing not to see an English referee there. But in one way, I'm kind of glad, Nick, because I actually happen to think that the VAR, the virtual assistant referee, is going to be an absolute cluster. And I'm going to be rather relieved that no English referee is going to be subjected to this system that quite actually isn't ready for prime time yet.
So, Nick, if you look at the VAR and the application of VAR, I wonder what sort of effect that could possibly have on the score lines of games. Are we going to see more penalties? Are we going to see more penalties called back? That's really the question, right? I mean, they've got the goal line technology for if the ball goes over the line. I don't think there's anybody in their right mind that could have any issue with that, because a goal is so hard come by that when you do get to one, you want to make sure that it's a legitimate goal. But by the same token, a lot of the penalty calls are highly subjective.
I actually really like the idea the idea of the virtual assistant, and I think it's been a long time coming. I just don't think that we've got it dialed down yet. When we've looked at how it's played out in the FA Cup in England this year, I mean, it's been nothing short of a farce, because what they haven't done is they're not keeping the fans inside the stadium informed of what is going on, and that's a problem between the assistant referee up in the sky, the referee down on the turf, and then there's this lack of communication that's going to create such a problem. Now, if all the incidents are being replayed on the big screen inside the stadium, that way I think everybody's in the loop, and there can be a lot more understanding and a lot more empathy to what the referee's going through. Because as you just said, so many decisions in football are completely subjective. You know, one person's push is another person's, well, he just used his elbow to lean a player out of the way. So I think there's going to be a lot of teething problems in this World Cup. I think there's going to be a lot of upset people. And I'm just praying that one of these 50-50 judgment calls doesn't affect the integrity of the game.
Well, I think it's less likely to affect the integrity of the game, Nick, because you do have the VAR. But I do think that referees are going to be less inclined to make difficult decisions and more inclined to either pass on the decision if it's not an opportunity for a VAR replay, or else let the VAR handle it, particularly as it goes to penalties. I think we're going to get a lot more penalties whistled, Nick, and we're going to see a fair number of them thrown out and a fair number of them given. So I think if there's an over-under on how many penalty calls the refs are going to make for the World Cup, I would definitely go with the over. But I think how many actual penalties are given after being called, and I'm not sure that that's yet a category that one could make a small wager on, but if there is, you might want to look at it. We're going to get a lot more penalties called and probably still the same amount given, but I think referees are going to defer to the video, Nick. It's may mean a lot more stoppage in play too.
I'm inclined to agree with you, but I want to put a caveat on that. I think it's going to depend on the stakes in a particular game. Anything involving Russia at home, I would say that it's going to go to the VAR if it looks like it's going to go in the Russians' favor. And especially when we get more into the knockout rounds, the quarterfinals, semifinals, where each decision becomes magnified tenfold, I think that's when we're going to see referees who perhaps haven't got the heart or the stones to actually make the big decision. And like you say, they're just going to push it upstairs and hope for the best.
I'm Nick Geber, talking with Nick Webster, the former voice of the Premier League on Fox Sports, here on Fifth Street Sports, on the Sports Byline USA Radio Network, SB Nation Radio. Nick, the World Cup, of course, we're all very excited. It's coming up just a few months away. Before we really get into our World Cup analysis, which we will do in the next couple of weeks, we still have to get through the Premier League season. I think you and I will all agree that at this point, nothing short of a miracle will stop City from winning the Premier League. In terms of relegation, the Baggies booked their ticket down, I would say, at this point, right?
Yes, I think Alan Pardew, he signed on to a losing team when he was injected into the team. I think back in November, and they've really done nothing. There was no Pardew bounce, and I think
right.
The Baggies were really hoping that Pardew could come in and do the kind of jobs he's done at Newcastle and at Palace and wherever else. Alan Pardew at West Ham. I mean, he seems to have managed every minor club in the Premier League, but yeah, it's not happened for them. And unfortunately, the Baggies, I love the history of the team. I think their support is fantastic, but they are going down.
All right. Well, we are going to get ready to step aside, take a break. This is Fifth Street Sports on the Sports Byline USA Radio Network. Find us on Twitter at Fifth Street Sports, and you can find us online at www.fifthstreetsports.com. I'm Nick Geber. He's Nick Webster. We're going to come back. We're going to complete our look at this weekend's Premier League matches. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this. All right, welcome back to the show. Fifth Street Soccer on the Sports Byline USA Radio Network, SB Nation Radio. Also, big hello to our men and women in uniform around the world listening on American Forces. It's great to be with you. I'm Nick Geber. We're going to, this last segment, really get into the Premier League matches this weekend, and I'll welcome back to the show a special guest, former voice of the Premier League on Fox Sports, Mr. Nick Webster. Nick, welcome back.
Thank you very much. It's been a resplendent last half an hour. The time has absolutely flown by. That must mean I'm having fun.
Resplendent is your word of the week, I think, right?
It's got to be. I opened up the Thoros, and there it was. So we're talking some Premiership, huh? I think I've lost you, Nicholas.
Okay, do you have me now? Okay, so we went from World Cup to Premier League, and so we're back now. Palace, Liverpool, Nick, you and I spoke about that earlier. As I mentioned, we both like the draw for that one. You perhaps like Palace for the upset, so you might want to bet both if you can, get a little extra value there, right?
Yeah, I think, Crystal Palace, as we said, they are a tough, uncompromising team, and the fact that they absolutely must get something out of this game, and Liverpool have this Champions League tie against Manchester City on Wednesday, I just can't help but think it's human nature for players to take their eye off the ball.
You know, another interesting match, and it's only interesting in terms of the form of the current teams. I mean, it's 8th place Leicester against 12th place Brighton Hove Albion. Last meeting was 2-0 for Leicester, but this is an interesting match in some respects because both of these teams are having in currently reasonable form, I would say. Brighton Hove Albion obviously lost to Newcastle, lost out, but they beat Arsenal. They beat Swansea. They drew against Stoke, and they beat West Ham. So they've only lost one in their last five matches for Brighton, and Leicester have only lost one as well, and that was a match against Manchester City. So this could be a good match, but I think likely to be a draw for some reason.
Well, the interesting thing for me is, they both got knocked out of the FA Cup in the quarterfinal stages, and if you looked at the lineups of both teams, both managers went for their strongest team, so they really kind of fancied their chances of hopefully advancing and possibly winning a trophy. And I think the FA Cup is obviously the trophy that many of the minor teams actually have their eye on and a chance of taking home some silver in a particular season. Now we come to the bread and butter of the Premiership. Brighton still not safe. Leicester, they know if they can put a good run together, and if you look at their fixtures, actually, their last remaining 7 fixtures, there's plenty for Leicester to get out of this one. And if they can get themselves in 7th or 6th position, that means Europa League football. Now, I know some may scoff at playing on Thursday nights, and obviously because it's not the Champions League, but for a club of Leicester's stature, you saw how well they did in the Champions League last year, losing out to Sevilla, I believe, in the quarterfinals. So the fact that they have European experience, the fact that you've got the likes of Jamie Vardy and Riyad Mahrez actually coming back into some kind of form, and the fact that Claude Puel has done such a great job with the Foxes since taking over, I really think that Leicester are going to go to Brighton and come away with all 3 points.
All right, so you've got the win for Leicester, which is interesting because I really think this is 1-1, Nick, for me. But we'll agree to disagree. Let's look and see where the best value there is. The draw is a plus 225 right now, Nick, which is, I think, really good value on that one. You're saying Leicester at plus 170, Brighton at plus 190. Either one is a good choice, but I'm going to bet the draw on that one.
Well, if you bet the draw, take a look at the odds for the over on goals. I think the over, the line is 2 goals, and I really see this game being a 2-1 win for Leicester. And so if you fancy going the over, I'd say go for the over on the goals.
Oh, you think go for the over on the goals? All right, well, there Absolutely. You go. Only here on Fifth Street Sports Soccer are you getting it. These are the tips that you're going to be very happy we've given you, and if you'd like to place a little wager, you can do that by going to our website at fifthstreetsports.com/bet-now and get busy making money, right? Man United, Swansea, Nick, a bit of a snooze fest here. I would say this is going to be a Manchester United victory. I think the question for me is, are United going to have a slip up between now and the end of the season? It's going to allow Liverpool to catch them. I would probably think that the answer would be no, unless of course they're playing Newcastle again, which they're not.
I absolutely have to agree with you. I think, Manchester United, even though they haven't really hit the heights this season, they're still involved in the FA Cup semi-final against Tottenham. They're in second place in the Premier League. They have world-class players in every position. And I think Lukaku is actually starting to come into his own again. I think he scored 6 goals in his last 8 appearances. So that's what they've really been lacking. But also, I think the interesting thing about this, yes, I agree with you 100%. United are going to win this one. But this is the battle of the 2 Portuguese managers in the Premier League. And
right.
I would have to say that Swansea have perhaps the better Portugueser.
Well, Nick, I'm gonna disagree with you on that because I know people love to hate on Jose Mourinho. I'm not one of those. He is an arrogant man. We're full of attitude and dislikes and vendettas. That's what makes him so much fun like for yourself, people like you and I. What's that?
Sort of like yourself.
Exactly, Nick. Exactly. I see a lot of myself in Jose Mourinho at this point, except for the Portuguese bit. But other than that, no, we're dead ringers. All right.
If we do look at the game, though, I would say go the over on goals.
Yeah, go the over on goals. I would agree. What is the line on goals on that, Nick? Do you know?
I believe it's 2.5.
Yeah, go the over.
The odds themselves are 4 to 5 on the over.
Okay, let's move along, shall we? Newcastle, Huddersfield. I mean, it was rough sledding at St. James's Park for Rafa Benitez, but they won 2 in a row at home. And I think that this game they're going to win this one and pull themselves out. Yeah, 3. Right, I'm with you, Nick. First of all, it's a big game for Newcastle. They want to get well clear of that vortex, that giant sucking sound that will suck teams down to the Championship. I think they're going to want to do well to get well clear of that. I think this is the match they're going to do that. I'm going to predict 2-0 on this match, Nick.
Yes, I actually really like Newcastle in this one. And I think defensively at St. James's Park, they've been outstanding all year. And they're very hard to score on. If we go back to that game against, I think you referenced Manchester United. United went there on the back of, I think, 4 or 5 consecutive wins and got turned over by Rafa Benitez, 1-0. So defensively, the Magpies, they're very solid. And Huddersfield, they cannot score at home or away. So, yes, I 1 or 2-0. I wouldn't go the over on this one, but I would put the house on Newcastle winning.
All right, Watford, Bournemouth at Vicarage Road. Who cares? Let's move along. West Brom, Burnley. No disrespect for Watford or Bournemouth supporters, but this is a match that really has almost no relevance to either promotion, either Champions League spot, Europe, or relegation. They're both very safe there where they are in 11th and 12th position. Nothing much there. Let's move along. Watford. We talk about Watford boards. Let's go. West Brom, Burnley. Nick, this is another gimme, I think, for Burnley, because West Brom in such dire shape, in such poor form, they booked their ticket down. They're done and dusted. They're dead man walking.
Well, after their last game, it was reported that players were crying in the dressing room after that defeat. And it's not often you hear about Premiership players, boo-hooing in the dressing room. I'm actually pulling for Burnley 100% because I've actually stacked my fantasy team with Burnley defenders. So I'm really hoping that Sam Dyche's boys go to the Hawthorns, grind out a nice 1-0, and I can say thank you very much and put 18 points in the bank.
Yeah, and defensively, Burnley have been terrific. I mean, they've been up in terms of goals against. They're up there with the likes of Tottenham and Liverpool, Man United. They're right up there in terms of goals against. Excellent, of course. At that level, it's putting the ball in the back of the net as well. And in that regard, they've left a little bit to be desired. But this is a match that they're going to win all the way. West Brom's misery will continue. We are running a little short of time, so we will go to the next match, which is the big match of the weekend. It is London Stadium, West Ham United against Southampton. We're hopefully not going to have any more rioting, but this is a this is a match where everything matters. 31 games into the season, people. And if you want to hear about, if you ever want a reason why relegation promotion is so exciting, this is one.
Yes, well, London Stadium has actually been rather poisonous recently for West Ham United. They've lost their last two there, 3-0. Against Burnley, there was pitch invasions, and it was almost a hark back to the ugly 80s and the 70s where fan violence was very common. So West Ham have actually, I think they're spending an extra 50 grand on policing this time around. But it is the mother of all 6-pointers. Whoever wins this game, Nick, will survive in the Premiership for another season. Whoever loses, I'm afraid they are done and dusted. And for West Ham United, you look at the squad, and it's one of those where you say they're too good to go down. There's so much quality, and I happen to love Marko Arnautovic, and you have to think that this is a player that can put West Ham United on his shoulders and lead them to glory. For Southampton, they've just fired their manager, Pellegrini. This is Mark Hughes' first game in charge in the Premiership. Will they get the new man bounce?
Yeah.
I really don't see it, because I think if the West Ham United fans can get behind their team and can create the kind of atmosphere that we've seen over the years at Upton Park, then West Ham United will survive. But I'll tell you this, if Southampton score first, it is going to get ugly in a hurry.
You know, what worries me about West Ham United, Nick, is their form as of late has been horrible. They lost against Burnley. They lost against Swansea. They lost against Liverpool, although, that's probably not a big surprise. They did beat Watford, but then before that they lost against Brighton Hove Albion. So they're not one of these teams that loses against the big boys and loses against and beats the strugglers. They're struggling all the way along. The question is, are they going to pull it out at the last minute? It is so finely poised, so finely positioned. And Nick, I'm going to go on a limb here. I'm going to say this is going to be a 1-1 draw.
You know what? I think the odds are approximately 2-1 on a draw, and I think that's a really good value bet, because if you look at both teams, they can't possibly lose, and so I think there's going to be a little bit of negativity about both teams' play. They're going to play nice and tight, nice and snug. It's not going to be a wide open end-to-end game, and so I would even go as far to say that 0-0 wouldn't displease either manager, given their particular form at this moment of time.
Well, I'm with you. So we're both going for the draw on that one. I know if you are with the Hammers, you're looking for that big 3 points, but I think we're going to just defer this relegation battle to another day. I don't think we're going to have a decider there for 17th and 18th spot this weekend. Let's briefly take a look at some of the other matches coming up. We just have a minute or so, Nick. I really just want to talk about Arsenal-Stoke. I mean, Arsenal is such a disaster this year. I don't see them losing to Stoke, but they just might.
No, they're not going to lose to Stoke. Arsenal's running is fantastic. They have 7 games, and I believe that Arsenal are probably going to take 20 points from those 7 games.
All right. Marijuana is legal in California and Las Vegas now, Nick. I believe you've been enjoying some.
Check the odds. Arsenal will win 6 of their remaining 7 games.
All right, we are going to step aside, take a break. When we come back, we're literally going to have 1 minute with Nick to wrap it up. We're going to get to Chelsea Spurs. We're going to do that really, really quickly. Then we're going to wrap the show up. Hope you've enjoyed it. We're going to be right back after these messages here on the Sports Byline USA Radio Network, SB Nation Radio. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back to the show, Fifth Street Sports Soccer, here on the Sports Byline USA Radio Network, SB Nation Radio, American Forces, TuneIn, iHeart. You can find us on YouTube, on Twitch. We're all over the place, on Twitter as well, at Fifth Street Sports. Johnny, let's go back to the guest line and welcome back, or the guest box, if you're watching us on YouTube or Twitch. Welcome back, the always delightful Nick Webster. There, you see, Nick. I'm resplendent, you're delightful. That's how it works, right?
Come on, you Spurs.
Ah, indeed. All right, well, let's talk about it. Chelsea-Spurs. That is the last match we're going to get to. We didn't bother with the Man City-Everton match because Man City are going to win that, so we'll just leave that one there. This is really interesting because Harry Kane coming back off a little bit of an injury. Chelsea, they need to win this match. Nick, how do you see this one?
Yeah, this is really a fascinating matchup. Conte has all but left the building. But Chelsea, they have some work to do to catch up to Spurs to grab that all-important Champions League spot. Yeah. Spurs have some history at Stamford Bridge, and that history being they've not won there in 28 years. So the smart money really is on the Blues, and I can't help but think that Conte is going to find a way to get all 3 points, much to the displeasure of the Spurs faithful. Harry Kane, if he plays, that would be an absolute miracle because that ankle injury he took was hideous. So I imagine he'll be on the bench, and Tottenham will have one eye on the FA Cup semi-final.
All right, Nick, thanks so much. Nick Webster, you can find him on Twitter, at Nick Webster. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks for joining me on the show. We'll have you back. All right, folks, tune in tomorrow. Fifth Street Sports, all the big sports we're going to get to, as well as talk about NCAA Final Four. We'll talk NFL. We're going to tell so much we're going to get to tomorrow. Rules changes. What do they mean? We're going to give you from a betting perspective. Don't forget Oklahoma Brian will be here. We're going to give you all of the details that you need. We'll be right back. Well, we won't be right back. I'll be with you tomorrow. Big thanks to everyone. This has been Fifth Street Soccer.